1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, it's Shay Keister, and I'm your host for the Casual Cattle Conversations podcast, where we foster innovation and enthusiasm in the ranching industry through sharing the stories and practices of different ranchers and beef industry leaders. Be sure to be a greater part of this podcast and become involved on my social media pages. Follow Cattle Convos on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, or Shay Keister on LinkedIn, to join the conversations around the challenges we face as ranchers and how we can overcome them. You can also find more information about this podcast, all my episodes, and how to partner with me on this show by going to my website, casualcattleconversations.com. With that, thanks for tuning in, and let's see who our guest is today. Hey folks, let's give a quick thank you to the association helping make this episode possible. Profit Repeat with Red Angus Genetics. Red Angus bulls generate repeated profits for commercial cow-calf producers. Year after year, despite unpredictable market conditions, cattle producers see increased return on investment for their Red Angus sired calves. These cattle excel both in the feed yard and on the rail. Calves sired by Red Angus bulls are eligible to be enrolled in the Feeder Calf Certification Program and wear the yellow tag verifying age, source, and genetics. Increase your profit potential with Red Angus Genetics. Visit redangus.org for more information on enrolling your calves in Red Angus value-added programs.
Alrighty, so what's your experience in the backgrounding space?
Well, we calve about 300 head of commercial mother cows, and for the last 25 years, we've always backgrounded them prior to marking the calves. So I'd say 25 years of backgrounding my own calves, and then also I work for Merck Animal Health company, and I have an opportunity to see a lot of different scenarios as far as backgrounding calves and feedlots or on cow-calf operations. Just a lot of observation there as far as what people do different, what works, what doesn't work.
Okay, so how would you define backgrounding as a part of the beef cycle?
That's a good question, Shay. I think that gets a little bit confusing to some people, and it's because it's defined differently by different people. But in my opinion, backgrounding is from the time you take those calves off the cow, and some people try to condense it into a certain number of days, and I think that's right. I think backgrounding phase starts when that calf comes off the cow. And to me, it's defined as a period of days, whether that's 30 days off the cow. My opinion is it needs to be a minimum of 45 days off the cow until they go into a feedlot type phase or a grass program phase. But I think at minimum for the vaccinations to take hold and protect those calves, get them nutritionally sound, I think a minimum of 45 days off the cow before they leave the ranch is, in my opinion, the true backgrounding phase.
Okay, so you've talked about it a little bit as far as days, length, time, and when it starts, but what does this process fully look like when we talk about backgrounding?
To me, it looks like bringing the cows and calves in, taking the calves off the cow, and weaning the best way you know how. I prefer the fence line weaning method. It seems like the calves don't travel as much in the pen. They're not as anxious. They don't kick up a bunch of dust. They're more more confident in what they're doing or supposed to be doing, and that is eating and drinking and staying next to the cow by the fence. So that's what the process looks like for me personally. It can look like a lot of different things. I mean, take them into a feedlot, background them into a small feedlot for a while without the mother there. But for me personally, it looks like fence line weaning and leaving them in that situation for a couple of days and then remove the cows or remove the calves or whatever your situation is. There's just so many scenarios that you talk about as far as getting those calves off the cow. We're kind of talking about backgrounding this morning, but the weaning process actually to me is a part of that. And you've got to get them started off right when you take them off that cow. So that's part of the process, is removing the calves from the cow, get them into the backgrounding phase, get them started on feed and water, get the vaccinations in them, and let them do what they need to do, and that's perform and gain weight and stay healthy.
So when you say feed and water, I mean, what type of feed is this?
That's another. Them are all good questions, Shay, and it's. I've thought a lot about this podcast this morning, and there's so many different opinions and scenarios that one can draw as far as what it looks like, what the feed looks like, how you do it. Just literally hundreds of different scenarios you could draw. So I look at, from my experience, what I like to do, what works for me, what I think works best in most backgrounding phases. And the feed to me looks like long stem prairie hay. Good, high quality, long stem prairie hay that's highly palatable, highly desirable by that calf, and then start them on some type of a pellet or some kind of type of a ration, slowly introduce that to them and get those calves on their feet and get them eating. You cannot hardly hurt a calf on dry stem prairie hay. And so I think the ration looks like dry stem prairie hay for a period of time. Start introducing those pellets almost immediately. Day one, get them going. If you're going to be messing around with corn, be very, very careful of corn. It gets into changing the rumen bugs. And if you change the rumen bugs too fast on a calf, that creates stress. And that can trigger what looks like pneumonia or sickness. Good barometer for me to find out if you're dealing with a true sickness or disease in calves, a respiratory disease or shipping fever. A good barometer of that is if you get some calves that look sick and you go ahead and doctor them with an antibiotic, any antibiotic, and they don't respond, chances are you're treating a digestive upset versus a true pneumonia. Because the antibiotics we have available today are very, very broad spectrum and good high quality products. So if they're not responding to one of them, and then you switch to another one and they don't respond, you're not happy with their success, you're probably dealing with a digestive upset. And then we need to come back and look at our starting ration and see if we've got the rumen bugs out of whack. We try to change them too fast. But bottom line is, I like the dry stem prairie hay and a dry pellet, and then go ahead and introduce them to your corn down the road in a week or two, and get them on their feet that way. I think it's so important in the way we start those calves that very first day through the first 2-3 weeks. We can get a lot of things messed up there, or we can get a lot of things right. And I think it's directly dependent on that ration and how we start them. And it starts with dry stem prairie hay. To me, it just makes sense because that calf is used to dry grass or grass. You know, you're giving him the same opportunity. All you're doing is removing mother's milk. And then the second part of that nutrition thing, what it looks like, is water. And water obviously is the number one nutrient of anything, any living being. And just because they have access to water available may not correlate to access. And if we don't have plenty of room around the water tank and the tank doesn't stay full, and especially in hot weather, those dominant calves will push those timid ones out, and that triggers some sickness and some disease opportunities. And so I think nutritionally, the dry stem prairie hay and water, and not just availability or access to water, but availability to good, clean water.
Well, awesome. Thank you for going into depth and explaining that more. So looking at backgrounding on the bigger picture, why is that an important part of this calf's life cycle?
I think it's a really important part of that calf's life cycle. And obviously, you know, production agriculture as well as anybody, but there's a lot of different management practices out there, and we can get by and do a lot of different things and have success, have failure along the way. I think when it comes down to the beef animal, the backgrounding part is so important to that calf, because if we take the time to background him on the ranch or in a setting that allows that calf to perform and prosper, I think we're doing a big favor on the animal welfare front and showing the world that we're doing the right thing for that calf and giving him the best opportunity possible. I think we're crazy to think that we can, have cattle without any illness, just like people. Sometimes we're going to get sick. Could be self-inflicted. It could just be something that's going to naturally occur. But I think the backgrounding phase in and of itself really is the one segment of our industry or one production opportunity that gives us the best opportunity to provide a setting for that calf to stay healthy for the rest of his life on to the next phase. And to me, it is about me. I always like to say, really, it is all about me, what I'm doing here on the ranch, because I'm here to make money. And if this backgrounding deal doesn't make me money, most of us aren't really interested in listening to anything on that. But the reality to it is, it's going to make me money. I know it does. Otherwise I wouldn't do it this long. As far as background my calves, if it didn't make money, I'd jerk them off the cow and send them to town and be done with it and hope somebody had a good day with them. But the second part, and I think the important part of this industry, is we need to look out for the next person. It's our industry is pretty segmented, and I'm always concerned about the next guy. If I'm going to background my calves and they've been backgrounded 45 days, they've had all their shots in them, they've been nutritionally started right, they're straightened out, they're not sick, that gives me some satisfaction that I can take those calves to the sale barn and move them to the next person, meaning the feedlot, and they're going to have success. And my reputation's on the line with that. So I follow through and make sure that they're happy with the calves. If they got sick, I want to know why, how many, what time, what happened, following up on that. And I think that's really, really important as far as the opportunity for calves and giving them the best chance at staying healthy and perform all the way through. And we want to talk about production agriculture, that it's about the rancher, it's about the feedlot. It's also about the packer and consumer. We know through research that we do a good job setting these calves up for success in the feedlot. The packers are going to have success, the consumer's going to have success. So it all plays hand in hand, and basically it starts with the rancher.
Okay, so looking at it kind of on the other end, what are common mistakes you see producers make when they are backgrounding?
Okay, yeah, and believe you me, there's plenty of mistakes can be made. I can tell you firsthand, I've made plenty of mistakes backgrounding calves. And if somebody's going to jump into backgrounding calves, I think they need to have their eyes wide open. I'm 100% on board. That's the right thing to do for the calf. It's the right thing to do for the industry. It's a right thing to do for animal welfare. Not everybody's able or willing to be doing it. But if you're going to jump into it, eyes wide open, understand your risk, understand your reward. And the number one thing is nutrition. I mean, we need to start these calves right. And I think that's probably the number one mistake I see. And it's not dependent on the size of operation. It could be a huge person, it could be a small producer. It's not getting these calves started right and not really understanding the concept of cause and effect of poor nutrition. And poor nutrition, to me, is not defined as not enough feed or low quality feed. Sometimes I see, as I look around and have the opportunity to get next to some of these guys, and then unfortunately, the reason I get next to them is they have trouble and they call me and say, hey, what do you think of this? And believe it or not, a lot of times it's the calves that get sick are on real high quality feed and a lot of it. And it's almost like we overdo it by doing what we think is the best for that calf, having really high quality feed, and a lot of it is actually the wrong thing. It's the wrong thing for that calf. So I learned years ago that, I don't want them starving. but I want those calves happy to see me when I go out there to feed them that next morning. They need to be a little hungry. Some people call it keeping them dry, keeping that stool kind of firm and not dry, but keeping that stool firm, not getting them loose. So I think nutritionally, that's one of the biggest things is understanding how to start that calf, how to feed him. And more is not better. Just like with vaccines, more is not necessarily better when it comes to nutrition. It's understanding the ingredients you're feeding them and the effect those ingredients have on the rumen of that calf and how that affects the health of that calf. So that's probably number one. Far and away, that is number one. So if somebody's going to embark in background in calves and don't really have a lot of experience with it, seek somebody out that has done it and has had success and find out what they're doing nutritionally. And I come back to prairie hay. That is the biggest, most forgiving ingredient we have access to is high quality prairie hay to buffer that rumen, and those calves will stay healthy. It's about performance. Now, calves won't perform real well on prairie hay long term, but we're not talking long-term prairie hay. We're talking prairie hay for a short period of time until those calves get over missing their mother. They're over missing the milk. And now, once they do that, and we've been through the vaccine stage where we're giving those vaccines an opportunity to work and the calf to uptake them, now we can start moving into the ration type deal. And a mixed ration, a pellet, whatever you want to do. Just a lot of different options. There's really not a right or wrong way on this process, but there are some things to look at. And I think your question was, what are some of the biggest mistakes? And the biggest one I see, but far and away, is nutrition when it comes to the feed they're eating. The other common mistake I see probably doesn't mess as many groups of calves up as the feed does, but it's the water situation. I mean, I see too many times we have 400 or 500 head of calves in a pen with one little tank in there, and they can only get around one side of it because it's in between two fences. And it's all burrowed out around the tank and blowed out, and they can't get up there to drink once it gets down a foot. Those calves just start getting enough fluid. And one of the barometers to see that is, number one, they're going to show you, they're going to get ganned up. The other thing is, you can tell a lot if you go into a set of calves at any stage of production and look at the stools of those calves. If they're all hard and dry and the calves are a little bit depressed, you need to start looking for a problem. Problem could be water. It could be nutrition. It could be water. It could be a lot of things, but those are the primary two. If they're splattery, a different color and all over the board, you need to go to the bunk. There's something wrong at the bunk. We probably have too much feed in there. If you're not feeding to a slick bunk, those calves are probably getting digestive upsets, acidosis, and they're going to show symptoms like pneumonia. You try to treat with an antibiotic, they don't respond. Chances are that's a problem. Go back to long stem prairie hay, get them straightened out as quick as you can, and get through that rough period of time with them. And then the third one is your animal health, your vaccines. I've been doing the vaccine deal for quite a number of years, over 30 actually. And I mentioned earlier, more is not better. And I see too many times we overwhelm these calves with too many vaccines. And I won't get into it too deep here, but there's things called gram-negative vaccines, your foot rots, your pink eyes, your somnus, your mycoplasmas, and we start overwhelming those calves with too many gram-negative vaccines, and we'll make those calves sick. It will darn sure help them get sick. So overdoing the animal health part of it, we need to do enough, but I see too many times we overwhelm the calf's immune system and don't let them respond very well to anything, and we can trip those calves into being more sickly type calves. So those are the three most common errors I see when it comes to backgrounding calves, and for that fact, any stage of cow-calf production or feedlot production.
Okay, so the next point I kind of wanted to ask you would be, what are the main things that producers need to remember when backgrounding calves? Does that just go back to those 3 points you discussed about what's in the bunk, the water situation, and vaccinations, or is there more you'd like to add to that?
No, that's about it. You know, I will say we do everything right, the best of our ability. We have nutrition right. We have the water right. We have the animal health right. It doesn't mean those calves won't get sick. Mother Nature can overwhelm the best intentions and best program. But my opinion is if we get everything right that's in our control, chances are Mother Nature's not going to hurt us too bad. I mean, those calves can take some pretty dusty, dry days. They can take on some pretty long, wet, windy, cold days. As long as we got those three things in order, the water, feed, and animal health, it's pretty amazing to me what those cattle can take. So we control what we have a handle, or what we can, and what we can't control, we try to manage it, but don't worry too much about it. I mean, try to keep them out of the, you know, if you got a big old blow coming, get them behind some shelter, do what you can. But my experience is that if we take care of those three main things, feed, water, and animal health, we can make them pretty bulletproof, but nothing's a guarantee. But we can help ourselves a lot and help the calves a lot by providing them that opportunity.
Okay, so switching gears to kind of the marketing side of things, what are the key elements producers need to be aware of or do when they're marketing these calves that they're backgrounding?
Can you ask me that one more time?
What are the key elements producers need to remember or do when it comes to marketing their calves after backgrounding?
Okay. I kind of mentioned it earlier, but risk. I mean, this is a risky business. We all know it's a low margin business, and you need to manage your risks as best you can. And I think that's why some choose not to background calves, take them off the cow and sell them. I mean, there's risk. You do it long enough, you're going to lose one. You do it long enough, you're going to have a wreck. No matter what your best of intentions, you're going to open yourself up to problems. But the reward as well. We know there's risk in it, but there's great reward in it for you personally, financially. You're going to have a little money wrapped up in them. You know, you're going to have some time wrapped up in them. But the reward can be awfully great done right. And it still starts with the quality animal. I mean, you can add value to any quality of an animal by backgrounding them and adding value to them for the next guy. But you need, you know, the higher quality animal, better reward you get, I think. So I think it's understanding your risk, understanding your reward. You know, you need to market those calves. Sale barns do a tremendously good job for our industry. I mean, we're fortunate along Highway 20. We have some great barns along Highway 20, Bassett, Atkinson, Burwell. Just some great barns, sell a lot of high quality calves. The people at those barns do a fantastic job. And not only in handling the animals and getting them through the sale barn, but getting buyers there. They do a great service. Having said that, me personally, I feel it's important for me to market my animals. You know, I try to make the contacts from past buyers. I follow up with them, let them know, hey, these calves are going to be in Bassett this day or wherever I'm going to take them to. And here's what they are. We got along good last year. You bought them last year, 2 years ago. Thanks for your interest in them, and do your part as a producer. I think that's probably the biggest mistake I see is we depend a lot, as good as the sale barns are, we put a lot of pressure on them to market our calves. They do a good job selling the calves, and they'll market your calves as well. You know, they advertise and all that. But I think as a producer, if you really want to capture the value out of your calves and the effort and hard work you put into those calves, all the way from breeding their mothers to backgrounding them, getting them to that stage, I think a big mistake is we don't do a good enough job as individuals marketing our calves.
So do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that as far as individuals not doing a good enough job of marketing calves?
And maybe that's not the right way to say it. I think maybe it's not the right way to say that they don't do a good enough job. Maybe they don't put enough effort into it. Maybe some don't have the confidence to do it. To me, that's kind of the fun part of it. You develop the relationships and you're building your own reputation. You're building the reputation of your herd. So I don't know, I have a lot to add on that, Shay, except I think that's a really, really important step that sometimes gets left out. We put all this work and effort into it. And, contacting the buyers. It's one thing to know the feedlot that owns your calves, the bottom. It's another thing to have a relationship with the buyers. Try to find those buyers, at least know them, be able to visit with them, follow up with them. Did you like them? Or I saw you bidding on my calves and you bailed out. You were 50 cents short of buying them. What stopped you? Not being accusive, but I'm just interested. What stopped you from taking that extra bid? Did you get to the end of your rope? Was that just the end? That's all you had? Or was there something about the cattle that they were a little too full or a little too something? Or you try to learn something from those buyers. They know a lot. They see cattle every day. And try to learn something, make yourself better and make your operation better. I think that's the goal, because we'll never know it all. We'll never know everything about it. But the fun part is kind of that, not knowing everything about it, but trying to keep learning of how can I make my herd better? How can I make my herd more profitable? And those are exciting things to me to try to get accomplished, knowing that it's impossible to do, but you're going to make progress all the time.
Well, absolutely. It's about learning and making that progress. But with that, that really wraps up all the main points and questions I wanted to ask you. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up completely?
Why is it valuable to the feedlot? I think that's something that needs to be hit on a little bit harder, probably, is the value to the feedlot. I think the industry is getting so much attention from the animal welfare side, the packers, and how you doing things, what's your production practices, and I think as a cow calf guy, if I can provide the best opportunity to a feedlot to minimize their antibiotic use, to keep those calves healthy, and provide a good product to the packer and the consumer, we know that sick calves don't grade well. We know there's so much we do know about how disease and sickness affects these animals. And I think, most feedlots recognize that. And I think sometimes cow calf guys feel like they don't recognize it. But believe you me, I believe feedlots do recognize that a backgrounded, well-vaccinated calf has more value than a calf brought into town right off the cow. And the market shows that to some degree, but not consistently. And I think the lack of consistency in how the cow calf guy views it probably creates some reservations of, why do I want to go down this path of backgrounding and put the shots into them and all the headache and risk losing one every now and again, when it's not a consistent payback. And my argument is, it is a consistent payback. It may not be financial every year. Eventually it will be, generally, but we need to look out for the next guy a little bit in this industry and give them the best opportunity with what we're providing them. And so my message to cow calf guys would be, don't get discouraged by it. You're going to lose one. You're going to have some expense. You can't take your backgrounded calves to the sale barn that have been backgrounded for only 20 or 30 days and say they've had all the shots and say they bring the same money as somebody that's got some higher quality calves in there that are right off the cow. That's not comparing apples to apples. The guy that brings some really reputation, high quality calves right off the cow gets more money, or the same money as you do, and you put all this work into them. Well, you got to buck up and realize maybe your calves don't have the reputation that this guy does. And maybe they're not the highest quality. Maybe they're put together calves. Maybe you got to recognize your quality. You're not comparing apples to apples. So don't let somebody misconstrue that and discourage you from adding value to your calves and utilizing the tools we have available to us to add value to the calves. So I just kind of want to touch on that a little bit more. I think feedlots recognize it. Of course, every cow-calf guy wish they'd pay more for backgrounded calves, but they can only pay so much. They've got a budget as well. So just don't get discouraged would be my message.
Awesome.
I appreciate the opportunity, Shay. I really do. I think this is a very important thing that you're doing as far as your podcast. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to see a young person get involved and do things that you're doing, and then bringing something kind of unique to the industry, and giving people an opportunity, another platform to learn and gain experience. I'll never sit here and have a podcast with you sitting here saying I know everything. I don't. There's probably way more I don't know, but it's interesting to me. And if you're interested in it, you're going to try to do your best and excel at it. And the message I would say is just a big thanks to you for doing what you're doing and helping people try to get better at their operations, whether it's, just cow-calf in general or feedlot or animal health, whatever it is. It gets me excited. It gets me excited to see you do the things you do. So thanks for the opportunity.
Well, thank you very much.
Profit Repeat with Red Angus Genetics. Red Angus, the industry's most favored female, generates repeated profits for commercial cow-calf producers. Independent research from a decade of data collection showed Red Angus sired heifers commanded $66 per head more than females of other breed types. That's nearly $5,300 on a single load of replacement heifers, a true boost to profits on your operation. Why are Red Angus females the most favored? Their strong maternal characteristics and quiet dispositions top the list. They are also productive, low maintenance, and efficient. In short, they do their job and do it well. Visit redangus.org for more information on the industry's most favored female.